Let's see. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Gura, and I am a master's level licensed clinical professional counselor in Illinois and a licensed mental health counselor here in Florida. My practice is the self-care path. I specialize in treating first responders, and I want to welcome everybody to listen in on a discussion between I've Got Your Back and mental health technologies. I want to also welcome back Shaun. Please introduce yourself, tell us some updates, and then we'll hear from Carl too.
Thanks, Sarah. Shaun Taylor from I've Got Your Back 911. And I'm a paramedic in Ontario in Canada. And we started a charitable organization to help first responders with their mental health just over 10 years ago now. And it's called I've Got Your Back 911. So all the money that we raise through the sale of all of our items like hoodies, t-shirts, water bottles, you name it. We don't offer any of the programming, the actual services and courses, but we raise the money. We donate to those organizations that do, and we allow them to be able to put these courses on and provide that therapy to our first responders to help them with their mental health. Yeah.
Excellent. And then you have Carl with us today. So I wonder, Carl, introduce yourself, and then I want to ask you both a little bit more about how you got together.
Sure. Yeah, so my other career is in commercial real estate, building software for that industry, and kind of fell into the mental health space more because the universe willed it than a conscious decision. And that event was very closely followed by meeting Shaun and the I've Got Your Back organization. And that took our thinking to a whole new level. And so the things I've learned in the last 2 years were still surprise me. But it's the kind of initiative that we simply could not walk away from. There was no need for a second career, but this one was too compelling, and it's a pleasure to go on this journey with people like Shaun and like yourself.
That's awesome. I guess I'm really curious about the mental health technologies part. Can you speak on that a little bit more?
Yes, and so how that began was that we have another partner called Mental Health Innovations, also out of Canada. That company is founded by an ex-military veteran, and he came back from service with exactly what you'd expect, but set about transforming the language and the conversation about PTSD. And the pivotal moment for us that brought mental health technologies into existence is when he shared with us his founder story. And he said he was sitting in an airport lounge one day, and somebody came and sat beside him. And as they do, they asked what he does for a living. And he said, well, if you look over to the left, he said, there's someone over there struggling with stress, uh, grief or loss or PTSD. And he said, if you look over to the right, there's another individual who's been through exactly that problem. And he said, my job is to connect those two people. That simple statement was so profound that the next step was, how do we work together? How do we, my partner from the real estate side, Hugh Molyneux, how do the two of us bring our technology expertise and the delivery of technology into this space where we establish human connection? And the rest is history.
It's incredible. I'm already getting some chills, which I love. But Shaun, tell me a little bit more about connecting with Carl and creating this app.
Yeah. Again, going back to Stefan, the partner of Carl's, he was actually a guest speaker at an awards banquet that I've Got Your Back was receiving an award for champion mental health with our first responders. And after that event was done, it was a breakfast and then an award and presentation. Then Stefan spoke and was basically telling his story and his insights. And then we just kind of got together, we started talking, and then it was like, hey, listen, we got a couple ideas here, but we would love to, talk to you to see if this would be something that you would be interested in and lending your brand and your reputation that you've already established with first responders. And that's where the conversation started. And then I think I kind of opened up Carl's eyes as to what first responders are actually like. And We're a unique bunch, that's for sure. But just some of the things that I brought up that would work, wouldn't work. And it was just kind of mind-boggling until Carl kind of got used to that conversation and, kind of a little bit more insight as to what we're actually like on the job, off the job.
So that makes me want to ask Carl, how did you start to sense that this really was a good fit for you? You're kind of like alluding to it because you felt like this personal connection to the mission. But as you heard about what building blocks were a part of it, what made it feel like a good fit for you?
There were a number of things, Sarah, but I think when the penny dropped most powerfully was at the end of all of this education that Shaun had given us. I walked into meetings with him at first responder departments here in southwestern Ontario, and he typically opens up by saying, Shaun's a celebrity, right? So we get there, everybody knows him. But we walk in and he opens these meetings and says to these people, we all know why we're here today. He says, we've all lost colleagues to suicide, and that's got to stop. There's a look that comes over the room every single time that I could never reproduce as an outsider to that community ever. I could say the same words, I could deliver it the same way, different accent, but it is so powerful that I recognize just what our purpose and our mission was. That gets me through all the moments of self-doubt where we worry about how relevant the technology might be or the barriers to adoption, all the other struggles. When you see those moments, again, you can't walk away, you can't turn away from it, and that keeps us going.
Shaun, you do have a powerful voice. I'm curious, though, Carl, again, um, what things have you learned about first responders through building this technology?
Yeah, I've learned that their world is nothing like what you see on Law and Order or Hollywood movies, like the reality of what they face. I mean, these are ordinary people. We're all ordinary people, but they are put in a position where they're dealing with extraordinary levels of trauma and stress in a way that I can attempt to understand and empathize with, but clearly it impacts all of them in a way that makes them bond together in an incredibly powerful way. Just like nothing I've seen before. You sort of see it when you play sport at some level, but even that is not the same because it's not sport is not a life and death situation. It's not about seeing mass trauma every day. And I look at Shaun and he has amazing coping skills, which you must have to survive that world. And so he can compartmentalize what he sees at work and not take it home with him. But at some point, it leaves a mark on you. It absolutely has to. And and it's why the work that you do is so critically important. And for me as an outsider, maybe that's the best thing that we can bring is not the technologies, but the outside view that says, Shaun, we see you for what you are. We see what you put up with and your colleagues and the way that you are bound by that trauma. How can we use this exterior lens of your world to make a difference and keep this pillar of society safe? Their job is keeping us safe, but what can we offer in return to them as a community?
Beautifully said. And it makes me want to ask Shaun then, you were talking to him about what you needed. He was creating, what was needed. What are those things that were needed? What does this app do and why is it working so well?
Yeah, I think the most important portion of the platform that we've created is the complete anonymity, and I think that that's huge on a couple different fronts. And the fact that it helps to provide that safe place for people to be able to go and understand that there is no stigma attached to them asking for assistance, and that if you don't want to expose yourself or let anybody know who you are, you don't have to. And I think that's profound. I think that's groundbreaking. I think that's something that has really never been pushed before. And I think that's because of a couple things. I think that it's been very difficult for services when I speak specifically about first responders, services not having complete control over every aspect of a paramedic's job or a firefighter's job or a police officer's job. And we've basically tried to force them to step aside and not take accolades for any of this. Let this develop and run through the wellness division, the SISM team, the peer support team, because those are the peers of all of the people that are going to be using the app. If they think for 1 second that this has management hands in it or management can see who's in there and asking for assistance, it's not going to be trusted and people aren't going to use it. And then it's a resource that's just sitting there flailing away and nobody's going to utilize those resources that are built into the app for them. So I think that anonymity is the biggest part. And I know that there's been some studies done throughout services and especially through the US, through Australia and the UK that show that once these services who would already support to a certain extent their first responders, once they brought in the aspect of anonymity, the usage went through the roof and was like 300%. It was 200% for Chicago Police Department once they brought in anonymity. The one paramedic service down in New Zealand, it went up like 500% when they brought that in. So I think that's the biggest thing for our platform. And I think that, it's something that we are resistant to change. We will not change that. And there has been questions for us about, hey, can we add this in? Hey, we'd like to add this into the app, or could you do this? And it's like, no, because that's going to compromise anonymity and we won't do that.
You're making such a great point. So I 100% agree, because sometimes where our peer support teams are failing in the United States is without that confidentiality and that privacy. Not only are we running into legal issues and arguments and he said, she says, and all these other things, we're just not getting the help to the person.
Yeah.
And we're making them shy away, because if disclosing something results in this even worse consequence, not only is there no help, but there's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And mental health does not have to be that way. We can run it and have the privacy and confidentiality. But I want to hit pause with you and go back to Carl and ask, what do you think are the other essential features of this app that are really benefiting first responders?
Mhm. The piece that when we began building the technology, we had this inkling that exactly what Shaun said was the place to focus, and we built that anonymous experience as a starting point. It quickly became apparent for us that in order to get that piece of technology in the hands of first responders, we had to serve the first responder team, the peer support team effectively, and that there was this whole aspect of the technology that should facilitate the connection between first responders and their support team. Whether they have an internal or an external is not really relevant, but we have to bridge that gap. And so the secondary piece proved to be almost as important, was that how do we keep the peer support team psychologically safe? And how do we facilitate that connection without invalidating the work that they already do today? Because one of the objections that we see is that the philosophy of the peer support team might be very much around creating that family feeling within their group. And it's about personal, scheduled, proactive one-on-one meetings. And those are great. But what we add to that experience is that when people are struggling so badly that they would not even trust someone that feels like family with their deepest insecurities, we have this other piece that establishes that connection completely anonymously, no judgment, no stigma. And putting those two things together was where the complete solution took shape.
So, Shaun, what about if one of the first responders are feeling depressed, anxious, traumatized, relationship issues, suicidal, an addiction issue? Where does this app step in and help?
Well, what this allows you to do, and it allows for the wellness division, that peer support team, the admins for the app to be able to see this stuff in the background as well. So when I log into the app, I log in with the same community code that everybody else that works in my service does. So there's no identifiable markers at all that says this is Shaun Taylor that is looking for assistance. And once I get in there, this is where we start to work with the team at that service, because we will initiate, say, a 5-option drop-down menu, which will allow us to help categorize why people are looking for assistance. So it can be, and it very much is, service specific. It may be something that really means a lot to that service. So it could be something like personal relationship. It could be a fatality call. It could be a child abuse call. It could be management issues, whatever it is. And we like to keep that list very short, maybe 3 to 5 options for them. And then that way, when they do a deep dive into the back of the app, say every quarter, to see what's going on, they can literally see that there was 27 people that had been into the app to get assistance. You don't know who each individual is, but because of what they picked in that categorization piece, it allows us to categorize why they're looking for assistance, which is profound when it comes to the fact that if there's, say, all of a sudden out of those 27 people that have looked for assistance, we have 17 of them that have put in their alcohol addiction. Okay, so why do we have this huge rise, this trend that's going on with alcohol addiction? This allows me to be able to go back to our management team and say, listen, this is what we're seeing on the back end here. We need to maybe allocate some dollars into some other resources that specialize in alcohol addiction for our people. We may need to re-educate or give out some more information in regards to alcohol addiction, something like that, so that we can literally head off this trend as it's happening versus not knowing that information. And then take a retrospective look after 5 years of dealing with this and seeing how many people you have off work. And it's for that exact reason. And then you go, wow, I wish we would have known that. Now you have that ability to know it. So I think it's huge from that aspect. And it allows us to work with the service to really personalize what this app looks like for them.
Understanding is such an important part of healing too. To be able to understand what's coming through on a maybe politics level means now I can fund it. And even though we don't like to talk about money, I think when I first started working with first responders, they were like, really? Like, your practice is full of first responders? There's that many with issues? What's the problem? Like, really, it was almost like you're making this up, or you're creating a bigger issue than what it really is. And it's so great nowadays, 20 years later of me doing this, to have something like this backing it up. And when you can back it up and you can understand it, then we can talk about, we need training, or we need our finances to flow in this direction too, in order to fully support the human that is the first responder.
Right.
Were you going to say something? Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you, in regards to that, when you started to experience that and get those conversations with those first responders, how do you see that it's changed, or has it changed in the last 20 years? Are you still seeing first responders say, really, there's that many of us that need this assistance? Or are you seeing a better understanding of what's going on?
I think it's a little generational. So if I'm talking to a boomer that's retired, like, I don't know what they're talking about, if I go to a Gen X, they're like, no one ever helped me. So, I don't care sometimes.
Right.
Gen Y millennial might be a little bit more like, hey, we really mess those guys up, and I can't mess my life up like that. And I'm sort of interested. Now, even younger, right? Is it Gen Z under millennials? Whoever's working in their 20s right now, they're interesting because they come in very knowledgeable. That they will tell me things like, I know I have depression and I have an anxious attachment issue, and my father was an addict and my mom was borderline. And so I'd like to come here and work on, some coping skills to make sure that I'm okay throughout this career. So actually it's very different depending on where you're sitting, but getting everyone to agree that first responders need psychological support services is the same as 20 years ago, it feels like sometimes.
Right.
Like we just don't know what to do. And somehow you found out what to do. Carl created something with a team to show this is what you can do. If you don't know what to do, here's one thing you could get into.
Yeah.
And it's rising. So as I say that, Carl, and you hear us talking about that, what are you thinking on the technology side?
Um, the thing I wanted to add to just what you and Shaun were talking about was the the education piece across the board as we look at technology and mental health, but uh, trust being such a critical piece of any peer support program, particularly when you bring outside partners into the conversation, is something that I think needs constant work. For the first responder, you and I could walk in and tell them this app is not in no tracking, no identifiable markers, no idea of your location. But if you're not one of them, there's a seed of doubt in the back of their head. And the critical thing, success factor, is almost less about the technology than it is about having people like Shaun and having their peer support team constantly reinforce the privacy and the respect for with which they are treated. So that is to me the biggest success factor is just keep reinforcing for people why this app, when you're in those darkest moments, you're not even thinking clearly, gives you the one button access that simply says in a safe, non-identifiable manner, I need support. That's it, and there should be no other voices in your head at that point, hopefully. But yeah, absolutely critical that people recognize that and stay on that game. Just keep reinforcing that simple message so that it's the one thought that it pops in your head when you most need it.
It's just huge understanding. Yes. I love where we're going. It makes me want to ask Shaun, what other essential features do we need to talk about so people understand this app? I don't want to leave anything out.
I think another really important thing that we've added into it is over the years is really, you have a lot of anecdotal information. So me being part of a peer support team, I can sit there at the end of a year and I can say, you know what, I had, probably 10, maybe 15 people throughout the course of the year, whether it was at a work function, just at a base. I saw them at the hospital. We were just kind of talking and they said, hey, I know you're part of the peer support team or the SISM team, and just wondering if you could maybe give me some resources when you get back to your computer because I'm struggling with this, or the call that I had last week, I'm struggling with that. That's never been recorded before. So any data that has ever been recorded and given to the management team to use for that business case has never included that. So this app, and one of the really cool features is a peer support member, team member, somebody on the admin team, they can literally just have that conversation, take their phone, open the app, hit the plus button, and just put in a simple, had a conversation with one of our peers today at a work function and offered them resources later on when I get back to my computer, and then save. So now that has now been captured in the back end as well. So at the end of the year, when you go to present this to your senior management team and say, this is why we need this app, this is how useful it is, and see the fact that people are using it and getting assistance, that could be an extra 15 calls, 20 calls to the size of your service. It may be an extra 200 calls on there that has now been recorded where it hasn't been before, because you know as well as I do, if I went to management and said, hey, listen, I've had 17 people call me and talk to me about this, they're going to go, okay, yep, yep.
Right.
Now it's not that at all. It's all included in that data for you to be able to go to them and say, here's the proof, here's why this is important for us. And so I think that's huge because it's never really, I've never known anything like that before, to be able to add those anecdotal conversations in there so that you can actually see that at the end of the year or whenever you go to your management team and talk to them about the app.
Mm.
I love that too. How about you, Carl? Is there something else that I just don't know to ask that you can explain about this product?
Probably the design philosophy, I would say, which is when people first look at the app, it might seem overly simplistic, but that's absolutely by design because the experience Shaun just described of a peer supporter having a just a chance interaction with a peer anywhere, in the hallway, at a coffee shop, they they're not they have the opportunity to not lose that the details of that interaction by simply, as Shaun said, you hit the plus button, complete 1, 2, 4 fields, save it, and now you've got this continuous record over time. So that simplicity is essential. And then I think we've already spoken to the simplicity of when someone is really struggling, and they're not in a position to make rational decisions or decisions in their best, or even remember the telephone number for a support line. The only thing they need to remember is this one button click that says, I need support. I've got one of these 4 options. I'm going to take the anonymous text message one today, or this is serious enough that I have to hit the 911 or the boots on the ground option. So simplicity of design has been key. And Shaun always tells them when we walk in, we're not here to teach people how many hours of sleep to get or how many scoops of vegetables or, to do meditate. None of that. There are other apps for those things. We need to pare this down to a no decision, one button experience that gets people the support they need when they need it.
That's so excellent. And I guess that makes some people wonder, and I do too, how do you train the peer supporters behind the app?
So you basically have a two-pronged approach with the app. Some services do, some don't. So if you have your internal peer support team, they do their own training already. So the service will provide training for them. So they are going to receive the confidential text messages from the peer that is looking for assistance. Some services have that. Some services still don't have their own peer support team. So the other option is to go external, and that's Boots on the Ground. And Boots on the Ground is an organization that was founded by a couple police officers, and Dave McLennan is the leader of those officers that founded it. And what it does is they provide training for all of their volunteers that are going to answer the phones 24/7, 365. It's completely anonymous as well. They don't have caller ID. They don't have anything. So when you call that 1-800 number, you're going to speak to a like-minded individual right away. So every single person that answers and mans those phones is either current or retired police officer, paramedic, firefighter, corrections, military, or dispatch. So I'm not going to spend the first hour of my call trying to explain to them the stresses of my job and what I have to do and what I see. They are already in the know. And a nurse or a dispatcher or a firefighter, just because they're not a paramedic, they all know and they understand. So that's the two-pronged approach. You can choose to use your own peer support team if it is available. Some people don't want to. Some people don't want to be recognized because of a specific call. And if you're dealing with one of your peers, they may be able to find out who you are, or maybe there was a couple crews that showed up on that call. They can narrow it down to probably 3 or 4 people. I don't want that, so I'm going to go external and I'm going to speak to somebody that has no idea what service I work for, who I am, or what call I was involved in, anything. There's no intimate details at all that they know. So it just kind of gives you those options. And if neither one of those is going to work for you, then 911 is there. It's a one-touch dialer right to 911 to get that assistance that you need, get you having that conversation with somebody to get you out of the headspace that you're currently occupying and give you those resources that you need.
I love it when you say it like that because state changing is really important here because you're in one state of mind that is unhealthy and unproductive and potentially dangerous. And if you can get to that peer supporter behind the app, through the app, because of the way the app is designed and it's more comfortable and just realistic, then you can start the process of state changing because someone's listening. Someone can validate you. They can relate to what you're saying, and then you refer. And I keep trying to emphasize that because, like you say, we're not going to tell you how many scoops of vegetables, how to sleep. We're not going to teach you to meditate. it's true. That's not what peer supporting is. You're not here to be even really a coach. Otherwise, we'd call you peer coaches. A peer support person will listen, validate, relate, and then get you where you need to go. And I think that this is really sounding so imperative for everyone to have. And it makes me also want to switch the conversation into the United States. And I'm not too sure how much, you may be able to answer this question, but it's like, what does the United States need? Because Canada seems ahead in this regard. But what are you hoping to get over on this side?
I think just acknowledgement that this is not just a problem with our first responders in Canada. This is a worldwide problem. I don't care if you're in, the United States, if you're in Australia, if you're somewhere over in Europe, we all fight these same demons. We all have these same battles. Being exposed to a cumulative trauma over years and years and years is going to have an effect on you. And it's how you manage it, it's how you deal with it, and it's what sort of support you can have to be able to prolong this career. You may not be able to last in this career. You may need to leave. But I think that taking it to the United States, they're the same people, just regular people doing this job, and it impacts them the exact same way. So I think the understanding of this being a global problem, but the problem with that too, Sarah, is the fact that if you acknowledge and bring something like this into your service, you're actually acknowledging that there may be an issue. And that's where a lot of obstacles happen, is the fact that they don't want to acknowledge that there is an issue. So they will do everything they can to keep something like this at bay so that they don't have to admit that there's a problem or be accountable for it. So it's changing that level of awareness. It's changing and creating a new standard that we owe our first responders. Like, it's about a new standard. This is what we need to create. We need to bring that bar from here, because that's where it's been since 50 years ago, 60 years ago. We need to bring it to here so that our people can actually have a long career in this career and, still find it fulfilling, instead of it driving them out of the career and trying to find something else to do.
As you were saying that, it makes this app sort of transcends some of the problems we have with uniform policy or what is law, for us in the United States. And, in one state you could have a peer support team and another you can't, or at least one is private and confidential, the other one isn't. But there's some exceptions in this state, but no exceptions like this in another state. So we're like all these different countries over here sometimes when it comes to this, and the app seems to transcend that. And there's a trend for that happening. There's so many more peer supporters than there were 20 years ago, for example. Why? Because they can help each other. And there are so many first responders getting degrees in mental health counseling. Why? Because they're tired of counselors not getting them. And so, yeah, this is, I think, just a part of transcending the problem of being stuck and getting people to help themselves with the trauma that they have or the issues that they're concerned about, so that, yeah, they can live their life and retire and feel like they have their sanity, their mental health, their physical health, their spiritual health. Yeah.
But the other thing too, that we haven't spoke about in regards to that, just coming up to that exact point, is the fact that, you can take 30 years of doing this job and leave the job, but the job doesn't leave you. You've already invested 30 years. So we try to take this whole holistic family approach to the app. So we bring it into the service, and it's offered to all the current peers that are working. But we also try to initiate that conversation with them and say, how do you speak with or keep in touch with your retirees? How do you speak with or touch base with families of the current members that are working here in this service? So we create a different community code so that it can easily be looked at in the back end, and you can differentiate whether it's a retiree or a family member versus an active member that's currently working right now. And we offer the same resources and service for the app to those retirees for free for that service, and to all of the family members of all those current members that are working at that time. So we just feel that it's important, because like I said, you can't take 30 years out of the employee after they leave. And usually they have no resources after they leave the profession. So we want to make sure that they do. The other thing is when I have a tough day at work and I have one of those fatality calls or something that really impacts me, I bring a certain amount of that home. I am lucky to say that I have a great support system at home. My wife is great. She listens when I need to talk. She leaves me alone and doesn't talk about it when I don't need to talk about it. But it's that baggage that you still bring home. It's that little piece that you bring home with you that impacts, the rest of your family. And so we encourage them to reach out, to get all of their peers to reach out, give them this community code for their families. So if they need to look for assistance and talk to somebody, they can also do so, and it's there at their fingertips as well.
Well, Carl, all of this, right? Like all of this is kind of what we're used to talking about, Shaun and I, and you come in on this technology side and need to bring responsible innovation in. I guess I'm curious, like, what are the perspectives on that as a technology guy, to be in the weeds like this?
It's a change from real estate. I can tell you that much.
Right.
One of the things is that I find most frustrating is how complicated the conversation continues to be about just doing the simple right thing. And maybe the United States and Canada are not as different as you think, because when we attempt to reach out to government at any level and say, we've got this community, they really should be served. And it could be healthcare, it could be first responders. The instinct is, sounds interesting. Let's launch this pilot project in some obscure little place where that would not attract too much attention, and we'll run this for 5 years and then build. Well, 5 years, I hear that everywhere. We've donated $2-3 million to this one university to keep students safe. Well, what about the others? So it's incredibly frustrating for me that that is the mindset. And when Shaun spoke earlier about bringing technology in, as people see that as signaling that or acknowledging that we have a problem, imagine if we could change that conversation to say, this is a signal to our team that we acknowledge what they're dealing with and that we're making every attempt to reach everyone and keep them safe, to change the language into a positive and be supportive, as opposed to these well-intentioned but not effective at scale reactions. And personally, I find that the most frustrating part of this space. And so Shaun's probably going to grab the desk and white knuckle it through this next statement. But I keep saying to him, what can we do to just simply take this app and give it to every first responder across Canada as a starting point, no charge? And we'll figure our way back into the financial model. Just to, software is expensive, so we do need a certain amount of revenue to sustain what we're doing. But if we can put sufficient pressure on the decision makers and the gatekeepers and the politicians that says there's actual usage across the country and it's this number and at this scale and here's what they're dealing with, maybe we take away their ability to deflect from doing the right thing in the short term, not as a long-term promise by which time they've left office. And so there's too much frustration in that statement to take action on, and it's why Shaun is excellent at helping balance that conversation out from the real world perspective. But it feels like that work that Shaun has done, where I've got your back, achieved organic growth because it was a shoulder to shoulder supporting people like me initiative, and everyone that does what Shaun does recognize his integrity and commitment to what they were doing, and it spreads. If we could make that happen for peer support, to me, that's where the magic would happen, but it's so difficult to pull off.
Yeah.
Such a real barrier. I want to let Shaun respond to the white knuckling moment.
Well, again, I think it's because I had to go through this when we first started I've Got Your Back 911 and the lobbying of the government that we did just to bring in the First Responders Act. And the First Responders Act here in Canada is basically it's become law where previous to the First Responders Act, it was if I'm a first responder and I have a diagnosis of PTSD from my job, I need to literally prove to the sanctioning body that what call I actually got my PTSD diagnosis from. It doesn't matter that I've been working for 20 years. I need to tell them the exact call and why I got PTSD from that call, not the accumulative factor. So when we were lobbying the government, I was sending 25 emails a week to our Minister of Labor, and he was getting some stories attached to each and every one of those emails. And I did that for a year and a half. And finally, we got a phone call saying, hey, you know what? We're going to introduce this thing. It's called the First Responders Act, and we want you to be here at Parliament. So went into Parliament. We watched it being introduced and stuff, and it was fantastic. And then they had to vote on it about 3 months later, and got called back in. Got to witness the actual voting, and it was 168-0 that they were going to bring in. So what that does now is it's now presumptive legislation. So because I'm a paramedic or because I'm a firefighter, because I'm a police officer, it's automatically assumed that I got my diagnosis of PTSD from my job. It does make those claims get through quicker. It does get things approved a lot quicker, and people are getting the help that they need a lot faster. There's still loopholes. There's still things that fall through the cracks. It's not perfect yet by any means, but it went from a provincial legislation and then it was adopted nationally. So now it's in every province across Canada. They now have presumptive legislation for first responders. So I've seen it. I've had to work on it. We have had to push the envelope for 11 years now doing this at I've Got Your Back 911 to make sure that people understand that we just need to do better for our first responders. And it starts with looking after their mental health. And so you piss people off. You got to push through barriers. You have to push through opinions that are not favorable. But that's what we have to do in order to see change. So change is happening, but it's incredibly slow. As you know, the wheels of justice do not move very quickly. So I see Carl, I hear Carl, but it's also the point that we need to break down these walls and impacting these students as well that are coming into the professions. So we literally just launched a university or a college that is offering courses for first responders and getting them to use the technology because these students are going out and they're doing ride outs, they're being exposed to this trauma. They don't have a SISM team or a peer support team to go and talk to after they face that call. They go back to school next day. Who are they going to talk to? Another 18-year-old or a 20-year-old that hasn't gone out on a ride out yet? No, they're not. So they're now offering this app and they're offering that resource of being able to call boots on the ground to speak to somebody that has been through this for those students that are experiencing the trauma while they're actually training to do the profession.
You're so right about the wheels of justice are so slow. And both of you are hitting like the existential crisis of what the real barriers are to getting first responders help. You know, we're not just talking like, oh, there's A, B, and C issues that we're going to tackle. These are really large existential crises, you know, about how we operate as humans. Because as you were talking too, I was thinking how in the United States, a first responder has to go to a counselor. The counselor has to do the evaluation and diagnose them. But then we get three independent medical examiners that are hired to say, Sarah's a quack. Sarah doesn't know what she's talking about. He doesn't really have PTSD. His treatment delays, his workman's comp delays, money starts to get stretched, reputations and resentments start to go swirling the drain, and the person's moral injury starts to get on top of the actual PTSD. And then they celebrate a win, right? We'll have a bunch of attorneys be like, we just won another case where we proved he didn't have PTSD. And I'm like, you didn't prove anything. And that independent medical examiner has no training in this culture. They didn't do psych testing that was normed on a first responder with this guy. And now we just don't care how he lives after this, his quality of life or anything. So between what each of us are saying, it's just, I don't know what else to call it, but an existential crisis,
Mm.
you know? So is there anything else, because I know we're getting close to the end here, that we didn't touch on that you think that we should definitely say or cover before we get to the end?
Carl?
We
We were so thorough.
well, the new player in the game is AI, I suppose, and given that we're talking about technology today, that might be something to close off with. As I said at the beginning, the thing that mental health technology stands for is human connection and that related life experience. But the human piece is the bit that is critically important. That is what creates healthy communities across the board. And regardless of any struggles I've been through, things can look pretty bleak. And all I have to do is have a conversation with someone close to me, someone like me. And they don't fix me, but I can get up and fight another day because it's just there's some magic that happens in those moments. And so where that leaves me personally and mental health technologies when looking at AI is not that AI has no role to play, but that we're not compromising on human connection as being the ultimate objective of everything we do. So am I comfortable with having an AI chatbot speak Shaun off the ledge when he's in trouble? No. The AI has not lived the experiences that Shaun has. And that's critically important. The AI will not establish that connection, that magical connection in the way that when he talks to a peer will instantly occur. So I don't think that's the best place. But when we look at the peer supporter side of the equation, there's a whole bunch of general coaching and general knowledge that could be applied to guiding peer supporters through their training, but also guiding them through difficult conversations and ensuring that they stay on track. Now, the danger is that as soon as the first responder is aware that there's AI on the other end of the equation, we might compromise their trust. They may never use that service either. And so it's a fine line and one that we're still exploring. And I say all of that absolutely convinced that the technology will only get better and better and better, and at some point become indistinguishable from speaking to one of us. But with all of that said, I think we become better humans by connecting with humans, and let's just make that happen as effortlessly as we can, um, using technology as appropriate and no more than that.
I agree. And I guess I want to add, I believe it was Gottman that did some research that when two life partners looked into each other's eyes, within 6 seconds, their heartbeats sync together. And we can't do that with AI. Or, when I am with someone that I care about and there's a physical touch, the oxytocin that releases, and to know that that's happening for them too. There is that human component that we cannot recreate. But could we make AI at least smart and safe enough someday? So I love that you brought that up. But it would be still very distant from the way us humans physically connect. Um, how about for you, Shaun, though? Any last thoughts before we come to the end?
Again, I think, our whole thought process behind this is getting it into the hands of our first responders because, again, you can be anybody that is just working for a tech company or a company that is trying to sell something like this into different services. And, you may get an appointment, you may get in there and talk to them, but It's completely different. And, and it's, happened a couple times, well, probably more than a couple times when Carl and I have gone into a meeting with a service and um, just because I am who I am because of what I do, there's that instant connection, that instant bond as soon as we walk into the room and we start talking because it's not a sales call. It's not really formal. It's very informal. And it just makes conversation go so much easier because I am who I am because of the job that I do. So I'm in there talking about this because this is something that also impacts me on a daily basis. This is something that I deal with on a daily basis. So the fact that it's, by first responders, for first responders, I think makes a huge, huge difference. But again, our message is very simple. We are not a wellness app. We are not anything but a peer support app. This is what we do, and we try to be good at what we do. We don't want to be everything to everybody because we can't be. And we can't be because then we start to risk and we start to lose that anonymity, which is such an important component of this. So we stick to our guns. This is a platform that we've created, and there's a lot of reasons why we've created it like this. And we just try to get that message across to them and say, this is so simple. It takes away all the stigma about asking for assistance. And, we just want to help our first responders. We need to create that new level of excellence for our first responders.
Thank you so much. It is definitely a simple way to give someone an authentic and genuine connection that they need.
Yeah.
So I'm going to thank both of you, Carl from Mental Health Technologies and Shaun again from I've Got Your Back. Thank you both so much. And I'll just close out and say I'm Sarah Gura from the Self-Care Path. I specialize in treating first responders. And I hope everybody enjoys this information and uses it and passes it or pays it forward. And thank you so much for listening. Take care, everybody.